It sounds like a big promise, but your solutions to your health challenges, I truly believe, can be found within this framework, not just for a season of your life, but throughout your life. Because the framework is a circle. So if you're ever stuck somewhere along the line, there's one of these pieces that's going to probably help you to feel more powerful.
Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. You guys, I cannot tell you how excited I am to share this conversation with you. If there's one thing I want you to do right now is make sure that you are able to really absorb today's conversation, because I know that you're going to walk away being like, holy F, that was so insightful. And you're going to walk away with actionable things to change in your life, because we are joined by Courtney Townley, and she has been helping women worldwide take better care of themselves with more consistency and ease for the past 20 years. She helps women mend their relationship with themselves so that they can achieve deep health and live with more power, more purpose, and impact. Deep health isn't about following someone else's set of rules or regulations for your life. It's about getting to know yourself better so that you can lead yourself better. So Courtney is absolutely incredible. She's a level 2 certified nutrition coach, a strength coach, a certified life coach, and she's author of the incredible book, The Consistency Code. I'm telling you that I could not wait to release this episode. So if you've been wanting to live a healthier life, and healthy on your terms, right? A happier life, a life with more energy, more clarity, more ease, more joy, more peace. And maybe that feels so out of reach right now. I am telling you that this episode is going to show you exactly how to do that, how to create a life in alignment with you, your needs, your lifestyles, your schedule, and what makes sense for where you're at in this stage of life. So without further ado, let's hear this conversation with the incredible Courtney Townley. Courtney, I don't think that there is a better time to be having this conversation right now. I actually had a moment a couple of weeks ago, and I recorded a podcast episode about it, how I noticed that my nervous system was so fried. I have been bombarded with nonstop stimulation, information, so many things being thrown at us. And I know that women, especially if you're someone who's like trying to optimize your physical health or your mental health or your emotional health, you feel like there is so much to do. There is so much to be done. And then you don't really have the capacity to do it all. And then you feel like you're failing and you feel like you're not doing enough. And so can you speak to the woman who is listening right now and tell her what she can experience in her life, what changes, what positive impact her life will get if she takes what we talk about to heart in this episode and actually applies it to her life?
Yeah. I mean, I think the two words that come to mind, and I hear this from my clients all the time, is just relief and peace. Right? That ultimately that is what people feel, I think, when they're introduced to a different framework, because you're right. Like you nailed it on the head. There's so much noise. We call it info-besity, right? There's so much information coming at us all the time. And there's also, unfortunately, this conditioning in modern culture where we are supposed to outsource all of our health efforts, right? So someone out there knows better than we do. And so we need the protocol, we need more information, we need the plan, we need the 12-step program. And we've had those around now for quite a long time, and we're not really in a great state of health, like as a whole, right? So it's not working. Mm-hmm. And having traveled through the wellness industry for 30 years now, I can say like emphatically that I think one of the biggest problems in the wellness space is we're teaching people how to follow rather than teaching people how to lead. And health is really an exercise in self-leadership. If you want sustainable health, you are going to have to learn how to make decisions on the regular that honor your health. Of course, I'm a huge advocate for hiring the helpers and the healers because they can help us get through some rough spots and understand things that we're not understanding better. But at the end of the day, if you work with a physical therapist, your healing is not happening in the clinic with the therapist. It's happening outside the clinic in what you do with the therapy. If you work with a nutritionist, same thing. They can guide you, but it's what happens outside of the conversations that really makes the impact. And, we could give that example for any profession out there in terms of you having to apply the information. And I think that we are such a culture of, again, outsourcing, and we're not doing enough insourcing. And I get it. And you nailed this too. We're not doing it because it's, number one, it's not sexy. It's not fun. It's time consuming. It's all the things that we don't really feel like we have, right? Or we don't want to spend energy on.
Yeah.
And it's hugely problematic because it just moves us further and further away from ourselves. And I'm a bit older than you, but we get to a stage in life, like once you arrive at midlife, there's a reckoning to be had with yourself because your tolerance to stress starts to diminish significantly in midlife. And if you have not learned how to live a life where you like who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do, you will pay a steep price when you start to enter the waters of perimenopause and menopause. Because when estrogen and progesterone start to depart, we can't buffer cortisol in the way that we once did. That's just a reality. And so we can carry a lot of unnecessary stress into midlife if we aren't learning earlier on some of these like self-leadership skills and coping strategies that actually help us to improve our well-being rather than costing us our well-being.
It's so good. And you mentioned you can have those helpers, you can have those healers, you can have those people who are going to help guide you in the right direction. But I think one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is that even then, it is so important for it to be a collaborative relationship where it's taking into account, well, how does this feel for you? How does this feel in your body? How does this fit into your life? I just recorded a reel on Instagram about the importance of having discernment right now on social media. We are getting thrown 1,000 people a day telling us, you need to do this, you need to do that. And when you don't have that level of self-leadership and that level of self-trust, you just take it. You just think, okay, I need to do this. And there isn't that self-filtering of knowing yourself enough to ask yourself, well, like, A, does this make sense for me? Does this feel good for me? And if I were to do this, I've definitely gone caught in this, not in terms of health, but in terms of business, where you do something because someone told you that that's what you should be doing. And then you're doing it, but you are so miserable and you are having to use so much will and so much discipline. And it feels like you're pushing a boulder up a hill. And would you say that you are seeing this too, like this lack of discernment, and it's not this conscious thing? It's because we haven't been taught how to listen to ourselves, how to trust ourselves.
Yeah. Definitely think it's a byproduct of that self-abandonment, which is a very sneaky thing. It's not like we chose to self-abandon. It just happens over time because we're living in a culture that's always like pulling at us saying, this is important and this is important and this person knows better and this is what you should do. And I love that you use the example of business because I truly believe that the things that improve our health are the same things that improve any area of our life. And in business, you can see people from the outside who appear successful, right? They're talking about their $1 million months. They seem to have loads of clients, whatever the case may be. But you enter their ecosystem and you start to realize like, okay, but they have no personal life and they just got a divorce. And the kids don't like them. And right? Like you start to see the cost of that. And this is very true in the health world. I always say that, looking at someone's physiology and thinking how healthy they are is like looking at their social media account and thinking that you know the truth of their life. You don't know. And the number of athletes and fitness professionals and very lean individuals that I have worked with over the years who were a very far cry from health is significant. Yes, they go for their runs and they go to the gym every day and they eat their salads for lunch and they maintain a very low body fat percentage. They also don't like who they are. There's a lot of self-loathing. They don't have a community of friends that they feel secure with. They don't like their careers, right? There's a lot of other things contributing to health that is wearing on them. And I would even go so far as to say, why they're doing any of that to begin with can be a huge problem. Why are you going to the gym twice a day? Why are you eating in a certain way? If you like your reasons, more power to you. But if you're doing it to try to gain the approval or to prove your worth, we need to talk about that.
I was one of those people. I was one of those people who from the outside, I'm this healthy, disciplined girl. Oh my God, she's going to the gym every day. She's eating well. You get into my mind, you get into my body, and it's complete misery. And so I always stress this, that like, I've been that person who was 30 pounds underweight, who seemed like she had it all together. And it was that moment of realizing like, wow, here I am thinking that I would feel all these things. I would feel healthy and I would feel happy and I would feel lovable. And I feel the furthest away from all of those things. And so it is so important to have that sense of discernment and self-leadership. And I would love to know if there is that person who is like, well, I don't know. I'm in this state in my life where I just don't feel good. I want to move my body. I want to eat healthy. I want to have more energy. I want this life that is great. Like where all of those little dimensions of my social life and my emotional health, like I want those things, but you feel like you are so far away from it. Mm-hmm. And then you're also depleted because life is getting more stressful by the day and more overwhelming, and there's more things. And so you're like, well, not only do I not have the mental space to think about those things, but then you outsource because you're like, well, at least if someone else tells me what to do, I don't have to use my brain. I don't have to think about it. And then you're like, and if I were to have to think about it, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about myself. I don't know what's right. And so like, where do you even start?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say it can be both and. Like, I think there's a time and a place to follow a protocol, right? I think there are moments of our life where that makes a lot of sense. But those are also experiments. Mm-hmm. You can't go into those protocols thinking, I know exactly what the outcome is going to be, because you don't. And if you're attached to the idea of what the outcome is supposed to be, I think you're going to be mostly disappointed, right? So we have to go into those with like open eyes. But the other thing is, there's a gal that I follow online who she bought this really raw piece of land, and I think it's outside of Seattle somewhere. And she built and cultivated this unbelievable garden of flowers, right? So it's a whole hillside, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. It looks like it's just out of Home and Gardens, right? But I'm telling you this because looking at it, I think I want that. That would be amazing. And I know full well what it took to create that. I know how many years it took her to cultivate that land and till the soil and plant the seeds and weed the gardens and all the things. And I bring this up because I think for her, she really knew that's what she wanted. That was her heart. And so she was willing to pay that price. I think when it comes to health and well-being, a lot of us haven't stopped to ask the question, what does health actually mean to me in this season of my life? Because I'll tell you what, on the edge of 50, what health means to me in this season of my life is radically different than what it meant in my 20s and 30s, which honestly, what it meant in my 20s and 30s was I looked smoking hot. Mostly, right? Like, I'm very transparent about that. Like, it was very much a vanity thing until I had a child and my business started to grow and I felt like I couldn't, I didn't have the energy to do the things I wanted to do. And I was just a hot, frustrated mess all the time. Health became something else. And so just pausing to consider, like, what is health really about for me? Like, what does it allow me to do in my life? How does it allow me to show up differently than I'm showing up now? Because when you get that clarity, your drive comes from a very different place than trying to prove your worth. I think your drive starts to go from a place of proving your worth to owning your worth. Like I have these gifts to share with the world and I can't share them with full impact and expression if I am struggling with my energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think answering that question, what does health mean to me in this season of my life? And then the second part is we don't build an amazing garden and by just snapping our fingers like Mary Poppins and having all the flowers appear, right? We have to decide what kind of flowers we want to grow. So I say this because what kind of exercise do you actually enjoy? Because if you don't enjoy it, so you're not going to keep doing it over the long term. Same thing with food, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with everything you decide about your health. Asking, is this like suitable to my likes? Is this something that I could enjoy in the long term? And also, what's the seed I'm going to plant? Meaning, what is the small dose I am committing to just get started?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't have the whole garden out of the gate. We get to plant a seed. So I always say, keep it stupid simple. What is the one thing right now that you are going to commit to? So if it's exercise, because I want to move my body more, awesome. What is like the bare minimum commitment you are willing to make around movement that you think you could also enjoy? And how you answer that question is probably very different than how I would answer that question, right? For you, it might be 20 minutes of running, so many days a week. For me, it might be taking a dance class a couple days
You
a
will
week.
not see me running.
Okay. Yeah, fine. But you get my drift, right?
Yes. And
I
I ran half marathons because I thought that that's what I needed to do. So like I've gone through that where I just didn't know what was health for me.
Yeah, totally. By the way, I did a half marathon too. And I think it was at mile 8. And I was like, I will never do this again. Like, this is so not enjoyable to me. It was fun up until about mile 8. And then I was just like, now it's not fun anymore. But yes, I think we have that in common. So yeah, I think define health and also pick an area that you want to start to focus in because you cannot focus on all things at once. I know a lot of programs will convince you that you can, but the brain already has a lot of work to do every day. It's already making a lot of decisions for you. So do your brain a kindness and decide on a place you want to start. And then don't set the bar so high that you fail. Set the bar so low that you can't fail. My bare minimum is I am going to meditate for 5 minutes every morning, right? Like that seems like nothing, but you also know what comes with that. There are days we're not going to follow through. And there's gold in that because that's where we get to really start understanding ourselves better. Why am I not showing up for 5 minutes of meditation?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a question to retreat from. That is a question to lean into and start digging, right? Is it because I'm tired? Is it because I have resistance? Is it because it's boring? Like, what is it? Because if I can start critically thinking about these things, I can learn about myself and then I can curate what does actually work for me better.
I am always telling my clients to lower their bar, which sounds so counterintuitive, but
yeah,
I'm sure that you see this a lot. A lot of women are like these high achievers, really, really high standards for themselves and perfectionism tendencies. And I see myself in that as well. And the more you can lower the bar, like it's so counterintuitive, but you're going to end up being more consistent and you're going to follow through and you're actually going to start on things. And I love that question that you said, which is to actually sit down with yourself and like retreat from life, whether it's like, if you can do it for 10 minutes, if you can just give yourself 10 minutes and just retreat from your life, retreat from the autopilot, retreat from the stress and the stimulation and put your phone down and just ask yourself, like, what does health look like for me? Because so often we get caught up in like being busy non-stop and you get dragged into these spirals of autopilot and then you're just going through the motions and then you end up in a life that is filled with stress, that is, you're not happy in it, you're not feeling good in it. And I know for me, whenever I get caught up in this as well, and I need, sometimes unfortunately it takes a rock bottom moment, but I need that time to step away and just say, all right, it's that concept of let me start with the end in mind. Yeah. Let me start with, well, what does health, what does happiness, what does a fulfilling life look like for me?
Yeah.
And then you have this clear picture, and you're not, like you said, you're not going to start and go after, okay, I'm going to start meditating and walking 20 minutes a day, and I'm going to eat all my vegetables. No, but you start with that first place. And the thing about that is it creates confidence. It
Yeah.
creates momentum of like, wow, I know I started my meditation journey a couple of years ago, almost as like a rebellion, because everyone was talking about how good meditation was for you. And I was like, really? Is it that good? So I told myself I would do it for a month, and I would do 2 minutes a day. That's all I could commit to.
Great.
And here I am years later, I'm doing 45 minutes a day now. And I hear this from my clients a lot, is we have this impatience. I want to be at the end of the line. I want to be done. I want to, all of these things, these changes that I want to make in my life, I want to do them all.
Yeah.
Do you see that a lot too?
Oh yeah. I mean, women always take on more than because they did a lot at one point in their life, and they think that they can just jump back into all of that when they're trying to get traction. And it's not helpful. It just keeps them in a spiral of stuckness. And I also just want to offer, like, yes, life is busy, but I also think a lot of our busyness is a hiding habit. And what I mean by that is we tend to fill our schedule so full of things that aren't actually that important to us. So we don't have time for the things that are. Because sometimes the things that are most important to us are the hardest, right? Like improving our health when we haven't been taking care of ourselves feels really hard. And so it's just a lot easier to say yes to other people's requests than it does to carve out 20 minutes for you to go for a walk, because there's resistance that you have to contend with and discomfort and all the other things. So I do think that, and that's one, by the way, of 1,000 hiding habits that people have. You know, not making a plan, focusing on other people's problems, never looking at data. These are all ways that we just avoid the work. And so that invitation of sitting down with yourself to just start answering some questions and getting really curious about yourself, it ultimately leads to, of course, self-coaching, which I believe is the job of any coach, is to teach their students and their clients how to self-coach. Because any good teacher, their ultimate goal should be to set you free. Right? That they teach you so well that you don't need me anymore. Like, you're the coach now. Right? And that's the work that, gosh, I wish we'd learned in elementary school or somewhere along the lifeline of growing up, because I think it would save people so much unnecessary suffering. The other thing I want to speak to about what you said is there is no end point with health. And this is something that I think the sooner we accept it, the less we will suffer. Health is a forever effort, for as long as we have breath in our lungs. But somewhere along the line, again, we picked up this idea that we're going to arrive in this utopia with butterflies and unicorns where we no longer have to apply effort because we've achieved the thing. Doesn't happen, because we've seen this happen, right? We see people achieve outcomes. They stop doing the things that led to the outcome, and then they start going back down the slippery slope to where they started. So I think in order to create sustainable, deep health, we really have to get rid of this notion that health is like a temporary effort. That is never going to be true. Now, there's periods where you can push a little harder, and there's periods where you can pull back. And I highly recommend that, depending on your season. But to think that I can completely take my foot off the gas pedal at any point, it's delusional.
Yeah. And also recognizing that it's this moving, flowing, flexible organism that's always going to be changing.
It's dynamic forever and always.
It's so dynamic, and it's going to go with seasons of your life. And a type of exercise that you liked doing 2 years ago, maybe you can't stand it anymore. Or maybe you were really into meal prepping 2 years ago, and now it just doesn't make sense for you. And you talk a lot about self-trust and realignment. What does that even look like? Someone who's like, I have none of that. Like, I really see self-trust as this muscle that you flex and you get to know and you start to reinforce. So what would you say that self-trust and living a life in alignment actually looks like?
Yeah. So self-trust is just a practice, right? So women who say, oh, I just don't trust myself. I'm like, oh, so you're just out of practice is what you're saying. You're just out of practice with trusting yourself. So I think the work that any coach does is in helping their client to rebuild trust with themselves. And I always say that self-trust is probably the biggest nutrient deficiency that I see in my clients. Meaning that when you don't trust yourself, you are always going to be scrambling for permission, for approval, for validation, for worth. And that is a really exhausting place to live because you'll never get there. Like people can't give you that. Those are things you have to claim for yourself. They're already within you. I talk a lot about power in my work. I love the word power. It's interesting because with women, we don't tend to use the word power. We tend to use the word empower, which drives me crazy because empower implies that you don't have it, right? It's something I'm going to give you. It's something I'm going to help you build. Where power, which we tend to use a lot in conversations with men, it just assumes you already have it. And women already have power. They're just not accessing it. They're not owning it. They're not expressing it. And so when we really start remembering our power and we start curating a vision for the type of woman that we want to be in this season of our lives. So I call it your power statement. And your power statement is simply completing the sentence. When I am living firmly in a place of power, I am a woman who what? And there's no right way to answer this. But think about when you answer it. When you're standing fully in your power, how do you solve problems? How do you take care of yourself? How do you dress yourself? How do you talk about yourself? Right? Like there's no end to the questions you could ask yourself to curate a power statement. But when you have a vision for the type of person you want to be, and you're really clear on that, and you reference it often and much, that's key. You can't just put it in a drawer somewhere and ignore it. You have just created an amazing filter for your decisions. And so when you ask about misalignment, I think what we have to look for with misalignment are the cues of misalignment. So I often pose the question to my clients, how do you know you're misaligned from that vision you have for yourself? And the answers are usually things like, I get super reactive. I don't want to get out of bed. I'm not excited about life. I drink a lot of alcohol. I eat a lot of sugar, right? Like I do a lot of self-loathing. So to anyone listening today, I would just encourage you to ask that question too. Like, what are the cues of misalignment? And here's the great news. Everyone gets misaligned. A lot of us get misaligned 14 times a day, right? Like it's just a continuous thing. And when we look at people who we think are successful, whether it's in business or health or anything else, it is not true that those people don't get misaligned, that they have some secret that they never get misaligned. They get misaligned all the time, but they have strategies that quickly bring them back. They do not stay misaligned for months, years, or decades. And I love to talk about campfires when I talk about alignment because I think it's a great analogy. I live in Montana, so we do a lot of campfires. But to build a fire is a lot of work, right? You have to build the ring. You've got to go get the wood. You've got to make sure it's dry. You've got to light the match, make sure you have the right amount of oxygen going to it, all the things. But once you get the fire built, all you have to do to keep that flame raging is throw in a log every once in a while. And this is how I teach my clients to really think about misalignment. When you find that you're getting cues of misalignment, your body's saying, hey, the flame's dying down, right? You need to chuck in a log. So that log might be putting yourself to bed a little earlier tonight. It might be having a healthy meal instead of skipping lunch today, right? It could be 1,000 things. But I call these things your anchors. So anyone listening, just consider like, what are the things that you know for you help you to quickly realign? And have those close to you. Like keep them on a piece of paper on your desk if you need to, or in your purse. So the next time you're feeling misaligned, you can say, oh, right, I just need to go take a little nap or go for a walk in nature, because that tends to bring me back quickly. And that really is the way of it, because you will forever and always get misaligned because life is a series of misalignments. So that's a guarantee. You will get misaligned in your lifetime 100,000 times. But getting realigned is not a guarantee. And that's where self-leadership comes in.
I wrote so many good things here because this is a topic that I have been, working on with myself and with my clients.
Yeah.
And I find that the more you're able to feel what alignment actually does feel like for you, and you feel joy and you feel clarity and you feel ease and you feel, really in your body, the more you pay attention to those moments, the more you're able to notice when you're not feeling that. Because oftentimes you get so caught up in misalignment, maybe your entire life is misaligned, that that's your new normal. And so you don't notice it as much. And every day I spend, like I said, I spend 30 to 45 minutes sitting and bringing in those emotions of alignment into my body, so that, let's say I'm working and I'm noticing I get a headache. I get a pressure headache when I'm out of alignment because I'm putting so much pressure on myself and I'm speaking critically to myself. I actually did this a couple of days ago where I was like, I need to go on a power walk. And my power walk is I get out in nature, and I just think about, and this is a question that guides me, going back to this question of power. I always ask myself, what would the most powerful version of myself do or think or feel right now? And so if there's a challenge that comes up in my life, if I have a challenging email, or if I have a situation that's requiring me to operate in a way that I'm going to feel good about, I just ask myself, what would the most powerful version of myself say? What would she do? And it helps you tap into this level of consciousness of like, oh yes, this is what she does. And the more you practice that, the more you get familiar with it, until eventually that's just who you are. That's just how you operate. And it comes so much more naturally to you.
Yeah, I will forever and always say that your future self, your power vision self is your greatest mentor. There is no one on the planet who can mentor you in the way that she can. And you can hire people to help you access her, to befriend her, to all the things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, she is your greatest coach. She is your best friend. She has your back like nobody else ever will. And so, like, really referencing her, which sounds so bizarre, but here's what a lot of people are doing, which is also bizarre. We tend to use our past self to navigate our life.
Yeah.
So we're using a version we've outgrown, that maybe we never liked, that made some really poor choices, that's never really cared for her health. We're using her to make our decisions. She's the filter. And that has to change. First of all, it doesn't completely have to change, because inevitably she's led you to some good places, right? Your past self has made some really good choices, but she's also learned a lot, and she's also probably made a lot of mistakes. And so we just get to edit, like we get to rewrite the story by starting to focus and being very intentional about how we want to move forward. And that's everything.
Yeah. One thing I started doing when I'm journaling is, if I'm ever journaling like how I'm feeling or challenges I'm going through, instead of identifying with my past self, I'm so stressed, I'm going through this, this is what's happening, I'm like, this is my past self. My past self is experiencing this, so that I can
narrate it.
Yes, exactly. So I can stop identifying with it and reaffirming that this is what I'm going through. This is my identity. This is who I am. Because the more you just repeat and identify with your past becomes your present becomes your future. And then we just keep recreating the past.
Yeah, we feel stuck because we're literally becoming that self-fulfilling prophecy. Your actions will always be congruent with how you think about yourself. And so, to your point, a lot of women are never pausing long enough to even consider how they're thinking about themselves or their lives. And the honest to God truth is, when you start doing that work, it is not a feel-good exercise, right? Because you start realizing like, wow, I'm kind of an ass to myself, right? Like, I'm not really a nice person, at least when it comes to the relationship with me. Or I tend to be really critical, or I tend to be really like problem oriented rather than solution oriented. Those are not fun things to recognize about ourselves. But when we do, Martha Beck always says awareness is the way out. You can start to make different choices. But without the awareness, nothing can change. And so we have to have that time to get to know ourselves.
I want to go into your 4-part framework that you share in your book, Consistency Code, because at this point, people love a sequence. They love steps. They love to know, well, what do I focus on? And so you have a beautiful book, The Consistency Code, and it gives people a framework. So can you walk our listeners through what that framework looks like in order to create a life and a health that feels in alignment with where they're at in
Yeah.
their life.
Yeah. So let me set it up this way, that I think what traditional wellness has done a really spectacular job at doing is selling this idea that health is a once in a lifetime transformation. But that is not true. Health or life itself is a series of transformations, and your health will be determined by how well you navigate those transformations. So I don't need a protocol. I need skills. I need skill sets to navigate a life of transformation. That's why I wrote this book, because I was so annoyed and frustrated with everything that I had learned and also had to unlearn in the industry, which, by the way, I was rooted in the fat loss world for well over a decade. And that really kind of broke my brain open about, okay, hang on a second. People spend 12 to 18 months doing all this work to reshape their physiology, and then they don't sustain it. What's that about? And that's really what got me into the work that I do today. But anyway, this framework, it sounds like a big promise, but it will literally be your solutions to your health challenges. I truly believe can be found within this framework, not just for a season of your life, but throughout your life. Because the framework is a circle. So if you're ever stuck somewhere along the line, there's one of these pieces that's going to probably help you to feel more powerful. So the framework is a set of 4 umbrellas of practices. So under each umbrella, there's a multitude of practices. So the first place is the practice of awareness, for the very reason we just talked about. You cannot change what you do not see. So I always use the analogy that when my son was really little and I told him to clean his room, he would always shove things in the drawers, in the closet, and under the rug. And I would have to say, okay, that's not really cleaning. Like, we have to expose everything in order to put it away properly. And the same is true with our health. We have to start really acknowledging the environments that we don't feel comfortable in or we feel really stressed out in. We have to acknowledge the quality of our thinking. Is it actually useful to the life you want to live, or is it preventing you from living the life you want to live? We have to start becoming aware of our behaviors, the things that we do that make us feel in alignment, and the things that we do that are pulling us out of alignment, which I call integrity pain. Like, ultimately, that's the problem I help all my clients solve. I help get them out of integrity pain. We have to become aware of our emotional landscape, because most of us have done an awesome job at learning how to escape our emotions. And that creates us or causes us to live a very small life. So the practice of awareness has a lot baked into it. But once we become more aware, we can start planning to live more in alignment with that version of ourselves, that power version we have. So we call that the practice of organization. Your brain has a lot of work to do every day, right? It's making so many decisions. And so when you overload your brain with trying to change too much at once, which we talked about a little bit earlier, your brain is going to freeze. It's going to shut down and say, no, let's go back to the thing we've always done, because it's a way to conserve energy for me, right? Your brain's looking out for you. It's like, no, this is way more efficient. Eating the way we've always eaten, way more efficient, because I know how to do it. It's no effort. So we have to plan the things we want to change to make it easier for our brain to say yes. For example, let's just say that movement is something you want to do more of, and that's the thing you've decided to focus on. And you've decided, you know what? I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to have a cup of coffee, and I'm going to go for a 20-minute walk. Okay, great. But there's 1,000 reasons why you're not going to do it, right? So we want to get to the root of those reasons. And it might be just because it feels a little effortful. I have some resistance. I tend to check my email, and then I get sucked into email. So we want to address all of those challenges so we can organize ourselves in a way that makes the resistance less and makes the likelihood of doing the thing much higher. Now, you know these women too. I've worked with lots of people. I've been this woman who has the brand new calendar in January, the color-coded markers, the beautiful sticky notes. I make the really extravagant, beautiful plan, and then you don't follow through with anything on that list that has to do with you, right? So the plan does you no good if you don't actually follow through with it. And follow through is probably where I do the bulk of my coaching. And I would say there's 3 primary reasons why we don't follow through with the promises we make to ourselves. Number 1, our nervous system is jacked. We are so overtired and overstimulated. We literally do not have the resources to do anything but self-soothe. Okay, so nervous system dysregulation can be a big thing. But not having emotional agility, the ability to be with all human emotion, So last night I was teaching a workshop and I asked the women in the room, I said, what are the emotions that you would love to feel all the time? And those things came really easily: joy, pleasure, excitement, happiness, right? And then I asked the question, what are the things that you would love to never feel again? Disappointment, fear, frustration, self-loathing. And we put all of these emotions in a circle. And the emphasis was just that this is human emotion. You're meant to feel it all. Life is 50-50. You don't get to not feel the hard stuff just to feel the good stuff. And so how good are you at being with difficult emotion? Because life is going to present you with a lot of it. And if you don't learn how to be with emotion, what are you going to do? You're going to look for ways to escape it or numb it or avoid it. And those things have detrimental consequences to your well-being because it usually takes the form of eating, drinking, shopping, scrolling, numbing out on Netflix, things of this nature, which none of those things in and of themselves are inherently bad. But the dosage with which we do them to avoid feeling something is intense. And I also want to say this, it doesn't always look like that. Like when we avoid an emotion, it can actually look like really productive things.
Yeah.
One of the ways I buffer, I work. Work is so easy for me to just throw myself into. I can do that rather than have a hard conversation, rather than go do something that I'm really resisting doing. I had a client once paint her bathroom instead of going to the gym, right? Sounded really great. Like she did something awesome.
Yeah.
But on her schedule, she did it to avoid the discomfort of having to go to the gym.
And
So,
can I also say for my audience who's listening, dieting, restricting, tracking, obsessing over your body. These are
the body is the scapegoat. Like anytime we have a problem in our life, we love to hyper focus on the body being the problem.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. We try to outwork and we try to just obsess and we don't realize that's actually a coping strategy and it's helping you distract. It's easier in some way to focus on food in your body than it is to focus on what's actually going on in your life. So I just wanted to put that out there too.
100%. And then the other part of follow through that's a big piece of that conversation is parenting the brain, because I always talk about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, right? Your amygdala basically is a trifecta of three main objectives: seek pleasure, avoid pain, exert the least amount of effort. In today's culture, that is a recipe for disease and dysfunction. Historically, hundreds of years ago, it kept us alive. It was awesome because we had to stay in the cave because everything was a threat to our life. But letting your amygdala run the show is very dangerous to our health and happiness at this stage. It has a purpose. Like if there was a Mack truck coming down the road that you had to jump out of the way of, it would save your life, right? So it still has a function, but we need to tap into our prefrontal cortex, which is the executive center. It's the thinking part of our brain. It lets us to it kind of helps us to do the coaching. It helps us to do the parenting of our own brain. So I was using the example last night that when I was going to give this speech, of course, my brain's like, oh my God, you're going to suck at this. You're going to screw it up. Like you're too tired to do this. Like I had all of that dialogue in my brain. And I was able to use my prefrontal cortex to coach me into wanting to do this speech because I knew it would help a lot of women. And, it got me on stage and everything went well. But that is a practice. And it's a practice, unfortunately, a lot of us never learned. We never learned that we have different parts of our brain that we can access, or that the thoughts that run through your brain are actually not facts.
Yeah.
They're just stories. And you do not have to opt into any of them. You can. And if they're useful to you, that's awesome. But if they're causing you a lot of unnecessary suffering, you probably want to rethink that. So teaching people strategies for how to do that. And then, of course, the final practice of the code is realignment. Because life
so I want to make sure that I've got all of my steps. So the first part is awareness.
Practice of awareness.
Second is practice of organization. Third is practice of
follow through.
Perfect. And now we're at our fourth part.
Yep. So the fourth part is practice of realignment. So life is we talked about this earlier, it's just going to constantly pull you out of alignment with yourself. And so what do you do to realign yourself quickly? And a lot of that has to do with things that I introduced earlier in the framework. It's going back to your power statement. It's knowing your anchors. It's recognizing that self-care does not always look the same. So when you have a death in the family, when you're not sleeping at night because of hormonal changes, your self-care is not going to look the same as a season of life where you have tons of resources on boards. And when women neglect to acknowledge this, they really get themselves into a bunch of trouble. I see a lot of women do this with motherhood. They become new mothers. I was this mother. I say some women waltz into motherhood. I was like a tsunami. Like it did not come naturally to me. And I just figured I was running a training studio at the time. And I just figured I can still go to work at 5 a.m. No problem, right? I can still see all my clients, do all the things. I didn't slow down at all. And it almost killed me because no one prepared me for motherhood. I didn't realize, because all anybody wants to talk about when you're pregnant is how cute you look and baby clothes and the color of the nursery. That's all well and good. But when I see a pregnant woman now, I just want to put my hand on her shoulder and say, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this, And it's a lovely, wonderful time. But I wish somebody, because I was so in the thick of the wellness industry and not one person said to me, hey, Courtney, things are going to look different and you're going to have to learn how to be at peace with that. Right? Your self-care is going to look very different. And that's not a bad thing. No, not one person told me that.
Yeah.
So I was still counting my macros and going to the gym at 5 a.m. and all the things and wondering why I suffered so much in that first year of motherhood. It was no surprise. And then, of course, going through the perimenopausal transition was very much the same, but I was much smarter because I'd already done that dance. And, obviously it's the field I'm in too. So I'm probably a little more educated than some, but just recognizing that when I don't sleep, I can't go to the gym at 5 a.m. And how I treat myself and what I commit to in the day just needs to look a little different. And there's nothing wrong with that. You look at elite athletes, look at Olympians, they use periodization to train, right? Periodization is basically a system of training where they intensify their training for periods of the year, and then they completely offload their training for periods of the year. And what does that do? It allows them to stay incredible athletes because they're not pushing at the same intensity 365 days a year. And yet, as regular humans, we somehow think we should be. And it's insanity and it's killing people. And so learning how to oscillate, just like the nervous system, right? The nervous system throughout the day is meant to oscillate through periods of effort and periods of recovery. But our year is also supposed to look that way. There are seasons for a reason. Winter is not the season to be pushing and, giving your all. It's a season to retreat and rest and restore and nourish. But we ignore all of that because we have, fluorescent lighting and we have all of these amenities that allow us to treat ourselves as if we're supposed to be doing the same thing all year round. And it's a problem.
This is such an important conversation because I was having a similar conversation with my boyfriend last night because it's in such a different realm, but it actually is the exact same thing because we've been dating for 3.5 years and we kept repeating the same argument over and over again. And then yesterday, finally, he was like, but I should be able to do this. I should be able to do this. And I said, babe, at this point, it's not about what you should or shouldn't be able to do. It's about what the reality is, what you can or cannot do. Right. And once you start living inside the confines of like, this is what I have the capacity for. We've been through this. It's 3.5 years at this point. For you to keep saying, I should be able to do this at a capacity that I don't have, we're just going to keep repeating the same arguments. And so let's work within the capacity of what you do have and then create some systems around that. Because to keep telling yourself, I should be able to do this, kind of the example for motherhood. Well, I should be able to go to the gym. I should be able to do this because I used to. It's like, that's insignificant. It doesn't matter. It's about what do you have the capacity for?
It's 100% true. And capacity changes tremendously throughout our lifetime because of those transitions that we were talking about earlier. Life is transition. And when you are in the throes of major transition, the kindest thing you can do to yourself and quite frankly, to everyone around you, because they will be the brunt of you not taking care of yourself. They'll take the hit. But the kindest thing you can do is to acknowledge that self-care does not always look the same. I have clients all the time who will get on a coaching call and they'll be like, oh, I broke my ankle and, everything's ruined and da, 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 da. And they're trying to still stay within the context of what they were committed to before. And I always kind of giggle at it. And I say to them, like, self-care, this is what self-care looks like right now. It looks like going to physical therapy. It looks like getting off your feet at multiple times a day. It looks like slowing down but we fight it. We fight the reality. And of course, there's, lots of people always say the quote that when you fight reality, you're always going to lose.
Yeah.
And it's true. And we generate so much unnecessary suffering. There's a great quote. I don't know who said it, but I use it all the time. It says that life is one long series of problem solving. And the sooner you accept that truth, the less you will suffer. Because I do think that we kind of, we're hard on ourselves because we think there is supposed to be, all of a sudden, we're supposed to have it all figured out. And it's all just going to get easier. And there's not going to be problems anymore, or obstacles or curveballs. That's not life. So the sooner we accept that that's always going to be coming down the pipeline, it just gets a lot easier because we just expect that problems are going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Misalignments are going to show up. How are you going to show up within those things?
Yeah. And at a certain point, you're going to realize that being hard on yourself, criticizing yourself into change and trying to shame your way there, it's not a very effective long-term strategy.
Well, it's not, you can't criticize your way healthy. It literally will make you sick because psychoneuroimmunology literally is the study of how our psychology and our emotions affect our cellular integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make yourself incredibly ill through the way that you talk to yourself and the way that you think about yourself and the possibilities for your life.
Wow. Okay. So what is one thing that we can leave our listeners with? I mean, I hope to everyone who's listening that you re-listen to this episode 7 times and you take some notes and you walk away and you really ask yourself, not just like, oh, that was really great information and I'm just going to go back to what I was doing before, but like, what is one thing that you can do right now that is going to help you start setting that foundation, get you into motion, get you into change? And so I know that there is never just one prescription, one thing that you can do. But is there one small shift that the person who's listening to this right now can start implementing, can take into their life right away?
Yes, I will say this. So at the end of the day, health is ultimately an exercise and stress management, period, full stop. Okay. We've been deluded to thinking it's all about diet and exercise. It's not, because there are so many things that generate unnecessary stress in our life. You being the primary thing. Like, we are the primary thing that generates unnecessary stress in our life because we're not setting boundaries, we're not having crucial conversations, a whole host of reasons. So I think one of the most powerful things that you could do today to reorient yourself to the direction of health is just thinking of one element of stress, unnecessary stress that you could offload. Like, could you just talk nicer to yourself today? Could you put yourself to bed 20 minutes earlier? Could you drink a glass of water between the 20 cups of coffee? Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. But I love this recommendation because I think it's a relief to a lot of women to hear that to improve your health, it doesn't have to be anything about diet and exercise. I'm not saying you don't eventually have to address those things and that they don't contribute. Of course they do. But you removing unnecessary stress from any dimension of your life is going to help out your nervous system, which is going to help out every organ and tissue in the human body. So what is just one small thing that you could do today to unburden your physiology?
I love that. I literally, my last episode on the podcast was, is your nervous system too fried to make a change? Yeah. And I had that moment where that offloading of stress was Instagram, my mail app, all of my apps that are not making my life better, and they are just creating more noise and more dysregulation. I'm just going to press that little X on my home screen and take a break. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm going to take a break. I've never been one to have phone games on my phone, but it's like, it's been a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. And I'm like, I'm so glad I am so more clear-headed. And so I think that is such a beautiful recommendation. Courtney, I am obsessed with you. I'm sure people who are listening are obsessed with you as well. So where can they find you, your book, all of the things?
Yeah, all the things really on my website. So graceandgrit.com is my website. And the book can be found really on all major online platforms. So Barnes & Noble, Amazon, or you can go to theconsistencycode.com and it'll show you all the places you can buy the book. But yeah, I do think if people enjoyed this conversation today, they would really love the book, because the book I wrote it, number one, to make self-coaching easier. So I give you so many questions to ask yourself and so many things to consider. But the other thing to know is I wrote the book for women to read in community. So it's literally written for book clubs. So I've outlined book club questions. We have a ton of resources on the website for book clubs. I host meetings. If people are thinking about starting their own book clubs around this book, I do those at least once a quarter because it's how we normalize hard things. And the only way we're going to change the conversation around women's health is if we have different conversations amongst women and men. But I think it starts with women around women's health. So the book really was intended for all of those things.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here, Courtney.
Oh,
This
thanks
was
for having
wonderful.
me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.